The story of Marty Meierotto is often told as one of survival, determination, and a rare commitment to living on the edge of civilization. Known for his role on the History Channel series Mountain Men, Marty built a life that most people would consider extreme, even impossible. While many chase comfort, stability, and convenience, he chose frozen forests, remote cabins, and long winters deep in Alaska's wilderness. What makes his journey compelling is not just the environment he chose, but how completely he committed to it. From trapping fur in sub-zero temperatures to flying small aircraft into isolated regions, his life became a mix of skill, endurance, and calculated risk. Over time, he became a symbol of old-school wilderness living, someone who relied on instinct, preparation, and experience rather than modern systems. This is not just a story about survival in nature, it is also about adaptation, family decisions, public attention, and the personal cost of living a life so far removed from the modern world. Through years of hardship, fame, and change, Marty's path reflects both the rewards and the sacrifices of choosing the wild as a home rather than a destination. Early life and the foundations of a wilderness mind set. Marty Meierotto was born and raised in the northern United States, where cold weather and rural landscapes shaped much of his early worldview. From a young age, he was exposed to outdoor life through family traditions connected to trapping and hunting. This upbringing was not simply recreational, it was practical, rooted in skills that had been passed down through generations. Unlike many children who grow up with structured city environments, Marty's early experiences involved learning how to read animal tracks, understand weather patterns, and respect the unpredictability of nature. These lessons formed the foundation of his later career. While other kids were focused on school sports or indoor activities, he was already developing an awareness of survival in harsh conditions. As he grew older, his interest in trapping became stronger. He saw it not just as a hobby, but as a potential way of life. After finishing school, he made a decision that would define his future. Instead of pursuing a traditional college path, he leaned into wilderness work and began building skills that would eventually take him far beyond his home state. That decision marked the beginning of a lifelong journey into some of the most remote regions of North America. Moving north, building a life in Alaska's wilderness, the turning point in Marty's life came when he moved to Alaska, a place that would become central to his identity. Initially, the move was driven by opportunity: fewer populations, more wildlife, and the possibility of building a serious trapping career. But what began as a practical decision quickly became something deeper. Alaska's environment demanded total adaptation. Winters were long and brutal, with temperatures dropping far below freezing and daylight becoming scarce for months. Marty began working multiple jobs to support his transition into full-time trapping. These included construction, logging, and maintenance work, all of which helped him save enough to invest in equipment and build his first remote setups. Eventually, he established trap lines deep in the wilderness, sometimes requiring long travel distances just to reach them. He built small cabins in isolated areas that served as shelters during extended stays. These structures were simple but essential, allowing him to survive weeks at a time without returning to town. What set him apart was not just endurance, but commitment. While many people would find such a lifestyle overwhelming, he embraced it fully, accepting isolation, physical strain, and environmental risk as part of his chosen path. The reality of survival. What living off-grid really demands living in the Alaskan wilderness is far more than a lifestyle choice. It is a constant test of endurance, planning, and mental resilience. For someone like Marty Meierotto, survival is not occasional, it is daily life. Every decision carries weight, from what equipment to carry to how far to travel from shelter. The environment itself dictates the rhythm of existence, not convenience or schedule. Extreme cold is one of the biggest challenges. Temperatures can drop far below zero for long stretches, making even simple tasks physically exhausting. Frostbite becomes a real threat, and machinery often fails under harsh conditions. Snowstorms can reduce visibility to almost nothing, forcing people to stop moving entirely until conditions improve. In such situations, patience becomes as important as skill. Isolation adds another layer of difficulty. Being alone for days or weeks at a time means there is no immediate help in emergencies. Every individual must rely on preparation and experience to solve problems independently. Even minor mistakes, such as a broken tool or a wrong route, can escalate into serious survival situations. Food supply and resource management are also critical. Trappers depend on seasonal cycles and animal behavior, requiring deep knowledge of wildlife patterns. Nothing is guaranteed, and success depends on timing, skill, and persistence. Ultimately, survival in this environment is not about heroics. It is about consistency. The ability to repeat difficult tasks under harsh conditions defines success more than any single moment of bravery. For Marty, this reality became normal life, not an exception. Fame in the forest. How television changed a private life when mountain men introduced Marty Meierotto to a wider audience. It transformed a deeply private lifestyle into public entertainment. Before television, his life revolved around remote trap lines, isolated cabins, and aviation routes known only to him and a few others. After the show, those same routines were broadcast to millions of viewers, changing the way his life was perceived. Television brought recognition, but it also brought pressure. Filming schedules meant that private routines were now documented, repeated, and sometimes interrupted for production needs. What had once been a completely self-directed lifestyle began to include external expectations. Camera crews followed his movements, capturing moments that were once experienced in silence. This shift created a subtle tension between authenticity and visibility. While the show aimed to portray real wilderness living, the presence of cameras inevitably altered the experience. Tasks that were once purely functional now had an audience, and that awareness can change how any moment is lived. Public attention also led to misunderstanding. Viewers often saw edited versions of survival life, which can make dangerous or complex situations appear more dramatic or simplified than they truly are. As a result, Marty became not only a trapper but also a public figure representing a way of life that most people do not experience firsthand. Despite this attention, he maintained a strong boundary between public exposure and personal identity. Fame did not replace his lifestyle, it temporarily surrounded it. Over time, the contrast between wilderness privacy and television visibility became one of the defining tensions of his career. Choosing family over the camera, the final turning point after years of balancing wilderness living with television production, Marty Meierotto reached a turning point that reshaped his priorities. While he had managed to maintain his trapping lifestyle alongside filming for a long time, the growing presence of cameras eventually began to conflict with something more personal: his family life. Raising a child in a remote environment already demands attention, patience, and presence. Adding television production into that environment meant constant interruptions, scheduled filming, and reduced privacy during moments that would normally be private family experiences. Over time, this created a clear decision point: continue sharing his life with the public or reclaim it for himself and his family. Marty ultimately chose family. Stepping away from the show was not a rejection of wilderness life, but rather a decision to protect its personal meaning. He preferred to teach and share survival skills within his family rather than perform them for cameras. This allowed his daughter to grow up learning the same traditions without the added pressure of public attention. The decision marked a shift from visibility to privacy. While fans saw it as an exit from television, for Marty, it represented a return to control over his own environment. He continued his connection to trapping and Alaska's wilderness, but without the structure and exposure of a production schedule. In the end, this choice reflects a consistent theme in his life, prioritizing long-term personal values over short-term recognition. Smoke jumping, firefighting, and aerial survival skills beyond trapping, Marty developed another highly specialized skill set: wildland firefighting and smoke jumping. This work involved parachuting into remote forest fire zones to contain and manage dangerous blazes before they spread further. Smoke jumping is one of the most physically and mentally demanding emergency response roles in the world. It requires precision, courage, and the ability to operate in unpredictable environments. Marty completed intense training and became part of elite firefighting teams, responding to wildfire emergencies across Alaska. This role complemented his trapping lifestyle in an unexpected way. It provided seasonal income during periods when trapping activity slowed, but it also deepened his connection to the wilderness. He was not just surviving in nature, he was actively working within it, responding to its most destructive forces. In addition to firefighting, Marty also developed strong piloting skills. Flying small aircraft became an essential part of his routine, allowing him to access remote cabins and trap lines. Aviation gave him mobility in an environment where roads do not exist, further reinforcing his independence. These combined skills, trapping, firefighting, and flying, created a rare profile, a man capable of navigating land, air, and extreme weather conditions with confidence and experience. Rise to fame through Mountain Men, Marty's life eventually caught the attention of television producers, leading to his involvement in the reality series Mountain Men. The show focused on individuals who lived off the land in remote regions of the United States, using traditional survival skills to sustain themselves. Unlike typical reality television, the series highlighted real environmental challenges rather than staged competition. Marty quickly became one of the standout figures due to his remote lifestyle, aviation skills, and deep experience in trapping. Viewers were drawn to his ability to operate independently in harsh conditions. Episodes often showed him flying to isolated cabins, maintaining trap lines, and dealing with unpredictable weather. His segments reflected a lifestyle that felt both ancient and extraordinary in a modern context. While the show brought him recognition, it did not change his core identity. He continued to prioritize wilderness living over fame. The camera crews documented his routines, but they did not define them. For Marty, television was a window into his world, not a reason to change it. Daily life in the wild, routine, work, and isolation life in Alaska for Marty revolved around routine and preparation. Each day was shaped by weather conditions, seasonal animal behavior, and the maintenance of trap lines spread across large distances. Traveling between locations often required snowmobiles or small aircraft. Once at a trap line, he would inspect, repair, and reset traps designed for animals such as marten, beaver, and fox. The work demanded patience and attention to detail, as success depended on timing and environmental awareness. Cabins played a crucial role in survival. These structures were often small, minimally equipped, and located in extremely remote areas. They provided shelter during storms and served as bases for extended trapping trips. Isolation was a constant factor. Weeks could pass with little to no human contact. While this lifestyle might seem lonely to outsiders, it became a familiar rhythm for Marty. The silence of the wilderness, the consistency of routine, and the independence of the work formed a structured way of life that he understood deeply. Risks, accidents, and the reality of wilderness living despite its beauty, the Alaskan wilderness is unforgiving. Marty's life included numerous dangerous situations, many of which highlighted the risks of operating alone in remote regions. One of the most serious dangers involved aviation. Flying small aircraft in unpredictable weather conditions is inherently risky, and there were moments when mechanical issues or weather shifts created life-threatening situations. Landing in isolated terrain often meant that assistance was not immediately available. Wildlife encounters also pose threats. Bears, wolves, and other large predators are part of the ecosystem, and trapping in their territory requires caution and awareness. Equipment failure, frostbite risks, and sudden weather changes were constant concerns. Even travel itself could become dangerous. Snowstorms, whiteouts, and extreme cold made navigation difficult. A simple delay or mistake could escalate into a survival situation. These realities reinforced a core truth of Marty's life. Wilderness living is not romantic in practice. It is demanding, unpredictable, and often unforgiving. Public attention, criticism, and personal perspective as mountain men gained popularity. So did public discussion about trapping and wilderness lifestyles. Marty, like others on the show, faced criticism from animal welfare groups and viewers who questioned the ethics of trapping. These criticisms centered around concerns about animal suffering and environmental impact. In response, supporters and participants in the lifestyle often pointed to regulated trapping practices, conservation systems, and the role of wildlife management in maintaining ecological balance. Marty's perspective, as portrayed publicly, emphasized practicality and tradition rather than ideology. For him, trapping was not framed as entertainment or harm, but as part of a long-standing rural livelihood tied to survival and resource management. Public attention also brought misconceptions. Television editing can simplify or dramatize reality, leading some viewers to misunderstand the complexity of wilderness living. Despite this, Marty remained relatively private, rarely engaging in public debates beyond occasional explanations of his work. Family life and decision to step away, one of the most significant aspects of Marty's later life, was his focus on family. Over time, the demands of filming and constant public visibility began to conflict with his desire for privacy and normalcy at home. He eventually made the decision to step away from the show, prioritizing time with his family over continued television exposure. This choice reflected a shift in priorities rather than a departure from his lifestyle. Living in remote areas with his family required balance. While he continued to engage in trapping and wilderness activities, he did so without the constant presence of cameras. This allowed a more private and controlled environment for his personal life. The decision marked the end of a public chapter, but not the end of his connection to the wilderness. Legacy and life beyond television. Even after leaving Mountain Men, Marty's legacy as a wilderness expert and trapper remains widely recognized. His story continues to be referenced in discussions about off-grid living, survival skills, and traditional outdoor professions. He represents a rare combination of skills: pilot, trapper, firefighter, and outdoorsman, each contributing to a life shaped by extreme environments. While television brought him visibility, his identity was always rooted in lived experience rather than entertainment. Today, his life remains centered on privacy, family, and continued connection to the wilderness. Rather than pursuing further media attention, he appears to have chosen stability over visibility, maintaining the lifestyle that originally defined him. Conclusion: a life defined by choice and endurance. Marty Meierotto's journey is ultimately about choice. He chose isolation over convenience, skill over comfort, and experience over visibility. His life demonstrates what it means to fully commit to a path that most people would only briefly imagine. While his time on television introduced him to a wider audience, his true story lies beyond the screen, in frozen forests, remote cabins, and long winters that demand resilience and patience. Whether viewed as inspiring, extreme, or unconventional, his life reflects a simple truth: living close to nature requires both sacrifice and acceptance. For Marty, that trade defined not only his career, but his identity